In Chapter 18, we are looking at international trade. When we look at trading and compare it over the last 50 years, our trading is 20 times greater, and that probably isn't a surprise to you due to all the technology. This has led to a dramatic increase in the GDP, not only for our country but other countries. A definition for globalization: the integration of economic activities through a market and across borders. So that is definitely from country to country. Integration is the creation of a single world. We no longer live in an economy just from the United States, but we live in a global world economy. And we have free-flowing goods, services, labor, and capital that reach across borders. Two influences that greatly influence this integration throughout the years is definitely the technological advances and the ability to transport, along with government policies that have allowed this trade to take place. As far as the government is concerned, they have policies, a plan of action on an issue, in this case international trade, that encourage and discourage trade at times with other countries. And that is due to sometimes we don't trade with countries due to problems in their country or government issues that we don't agree with. You should know that exports are sales to other countries, and imports are those purchases that we purchase from other countries. Some of the barriers to trade is protectionist, and this is where a government steps in and seeks to limit the imports. And this is to protect local businesses from foreign competition. Remember, when we bring in products from other countries, that is hurting business at times with products that are sold or made in this country. It also can protect workers and jobs in our country. So first and foremost, we need to look out for those businesses in the United States. Tariffs are taxes that are placed on imports, and this makes importing more expensive, and that tax is passed on to consumers. Quotas are a limit of how much of a particular good can be brought into the country during a specific time period, and this is brought about for the protection of businesses in this country. In the 1930s, the United States government chose to raise tariffs on all imports, and world trade, because of that, dropped about 2/3, and many believe this was something that helped bring about the Great Depression. In 1944, the U.S., along with other nations, agreed to build a global economy based on more free trade. So the nations agreed to create a safety net of worker protections to reduce unemployment and poverty. And the United Nations formed the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank to achieve these goals. Now, the World Trade Organization, we have replaced the GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, in 1995. It includes not only goods but also those services, and it protects intellectual property, which are ideas, designs, and creative ventures. The other trade agreements that we have are the European Union. This is 25 independent nations that trade free with one another, and the goal of that was to build a single European market. And then we have NAFTA, which is the North American Trade Agreement, which was designed to reduce the barriers between our neighbors in Mexico and Canada. This is a graph that shows how NAFTA affected exports. And you can see that this is just processed foods and beverages, and this is a representation of 10 years between 92 and 2002, how that these exports compared. Also a part of Chapter 18 is multinational corporations, and those are corporations that have branches, plants, or offices in at least 2 or more countries, and there are many, many of these now. Many of the bigger countries that have a presence here in the United States also have presence in several different countries. Cross-border just means that an entity is not confined to one single country, but it also crosses the border into at least one other country. And a foreign affiliate is a firm that is wholly owned or in part by a multinational corporation. Here are some characteristics about multinationals. In 1969, there were about 7,300 of them, but by the year 2000, that had grown to 6,300, and that included almost 700 foreign affiliates that would have been owned partly or in whole by these multinational corporations. They often cross border trading through their foreign affiliates. They also, through their foreign affiliates, sell a variety of services, and some of them are known as intra-firm trades. An intra-firm trade is the purchase of the seller goods by one part of a company to another part, such as a foreign affiliate. So this allows the multinational corporation to keep its costs down and also to integrate production processes on a global scale. Within the United States alone, there are American multinationals and their foreign affiliates that employ about 30 million people, or that adds to about a total of the 20% of the civilian workforce. Worldwide, there's approximately 90 million workers that produce over a quarter of the world's GDP. So these are very, very large corporations that account for 80% of the world's industrial output. And also, they would make a lot of money as compared to small businesses. Now, this is a graph that shows the top multinationals in 2001. I'll be showing something in class that where we can get a little bigger picture of where we are currently with multinationals. The global supply chain is, well, we know the definition of a supply chain: a firm and all of the companies that supply it with its natural resources, its human resources, its capital resources, and the collection of those that participate in the process of providing a good or a service. So multinationals have global supply chains that include the intra-firm and the cross-border investment and trade. Lesson 3 in Chapter 18 is about finance and trade. And when we look at that, we have to consider the foreign exchange. As you know, every country has its own legal tender and what they use for currency in their country. So we have to come up with a foreign exchange rate where each country can trade currency with another country's currency. In the past, we have had a fixed rate of exchange, which is a value that's set for currencies to trade with one another. Currently, we have a flexible exchange rate, which the prices of various currencies are based on supply and demand for those goods, and it's in use by pretty much most of the nations today. If the value depreciates, then the value of the currency goes down, and we'll look at some current foreign exchange rates between the United States and other countries in class. When we look at trade in this country, we need to look at the balance of trade and where we are in concern to exports and imports. A lot of times this balance of trade is affected by the currency's exchange rate. When the nation's currency depreciates, then there are more exports. When the nation's currency increases, then there is more imports. So when we have a trade surplus, that means that we're exporting more than we're importing. That hasn't happened in the United States for a very long time. We are normally each year at a trade deficit, which means that we import more goods than we export. So the foreign exchanges are reported in two different ways. If you change US dollars into pesos, and if you check the exchange rate the following week or even the next day, the rate might be higher or lower. Prior to 1971, the exchange rates were fixed, but today is a flexible standard. So a trade deficit is not necessarily bad for a country's economy. By having a trade deficit, we allow foreign businesses to invest in the United States economy, and it also supports industry and creates jobs. The United States of America has not had a surplus since 1975. So be prepared to answer some questions.